a Goliath of history. Let's explore the life of Takahashi Korekiyo, a finance minister born under the Tokugawa shogunate who shaped modern Japan. How did an illegitimate son from feudal Japan become one of the world's most influential economists? Takahashi's story is truly remarkable. He funded the Russo-Japanese War, led Japan's recovery from the Great Depression before any other major power, and made significant contributions to modern finance. But there's more to this samurai-turned-economist's tale. His anti-colonial views and economic policies might have changed the course of history, if not for his untimely assassination. Let's dive into this fascinating journey of a man who rose from humble beginnings to become a key figure in Japan's economic transformation. You might be surprised by the twists and turns in Takahashi's life and the lasting impact he had on Japan and the world of economics. The humble beginnings of a great economic mind. Did you know that one of Japan's greatest economic minds began life as an illegitimate child? It's true. Takahashi Korekiyo, the man who would go on to shape modern Japanese finance, was born in 1854 in Edo, now Tokyo, but his beginnings were far from promising. In Tokugawa-era Japan, society was rigidly hierarchical. At the top were the samurai, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants. Takahashi, however, didn't fit neatly into any of these categories. As an illegitimate child, he occupied one of the lowest rungs on the social ladder, facing significant stigma and limited rights. His prospects for education and social mobility were bleak. But fate intervened in the form of his grandmother, who saw the challenges he would face and made a bold decision. She arranged for his adoption into a samurai family. Adoption into samurai families, while uncommon, offered a lifeline for illegitimate children, providing them with social status and opportunities that would otherwise be out of reach. This adoption was a turning point in Takahashi's life, granting him access to education and networks crucial for his future success. His unique position, straddling the world of the marginalized and the elite, gave him a rare perspective on Japan's societal structure, which would later shape his vision for economic reform. As Takahashi grew, his understanding of social inequalities and the potential for change deepened. These early experiences laid the foundation for policies aimed at balancing social and economic disparities. But his journey was just beginning. His next chapter would take him across the Pacific to America, a journey that would test his resilience and redefine his path. An American Odyssey, from aspiring student to indentured servant. In 1867, 13-year-old Takahashi Korekiyo set sail for San Francisco, dreaming of learning English and broadening his horizons. However, upon arrival, his hopes were dashed. Through deceptive practices, Takahashi was tricked into signing an indentured servitude contract, effectively making him a servant in a foreign land. Takahashi's first placement was with the Van Reed family in Oakland, where he endured grueling work instead of the education he had envisioned. Later, he was sent to the Brown family, working as a ranch hand and vineyard laborer. Despite the harsh conditions, Takahashi's resilience shone through. Unknowingly, he mistook this brutal regimen as part of his education. Yet, there were small silver linings. Through daily interactions, he gradually learned to speak and read English, a skill that would prove invaluable in his future career. Salvation came when the Japanese consul learned of Takahashi's plight. The consul annulled his indentured contract, paying the Brown family to secure his release. In December 1868, after over a year of servitude, Takahashi returned to Japan, forever changed by his experience. This challenging period gave him a unique perspective on Western culture, economics, and the darker side of capitalism. These lessons would later inform his economic policies and leadership in Japan. Navigating a new Japan, education and cultural crossroads. The Japan Takahashi returned to in 1868 was a nation in flux. The Meiji Restoration had begun, ushering in an era of rapid modernization. With his unique background, a samurai upbringing, and first-hand exposure to Western ideas, Takahashi was perfectly positioned to navigate this transformative period. Traditional samurai education emphasized Confucian classics, martial arts, and calligraphy. In contrast, Takahashi's time in America, despite its hardships, had exposed him to Western concepts and the English language. This dual perspective must have been both disorienting and empowering. As Japan modernized its education system, institutions like the University of Tokyo emerged, aiming to produce leaders equipped with technical and scientific knowledge. Takahashi, leveraging his English skills, began working as an English teacher, a role in high demand as Japan sought to bridge linguistic and cultural gaps with the West. This period cemented Takahashi's ability to synthesize traditional Japanese values with Western innovations, making him a valuable asset as Japan industrialized and engaged with the global stage. A rising star in finance, from adversity to opportunity. In 1892, Takahashi entered the Bank of Japan, marking the start of a meteoric rise. Despite lacking formal financial education and facing setbacks like a failed silver mine venture, he brought a wealth of practical experience and a unique perspective to the institution. Takahashi quickly distinguished himself. His understanding of Western financial systems and his innovative approach to monetary policy made him stand out. By 1899, just 7 years after joining the bank, he became deputy governor, a testament to his ability and determination. One of his key contributions was advocating for the central bank's active role in stimulating economic growth. He championed lower interest rates to combat deflation, a forward-thinking strategy for the time. Takahashi's practical mindset, shaped by his diverse experiences, proved invaluable. His understanding of risk and due diligence, learned from past failures, helped strengthen Japan's financial system during a critical period of modernization. As Japan prepared for a potential conflict with Russia, Takahashi's skills were put to the test. The Bank of Japan needed to ensure financial stability and secure foreign capital to fund the war effort. Takahashi's expertise and unconventional background made him uniquely suited for the challenge ahead. As Japan faced mounting tensions with Russia, Takahashi's leadership would prove crucial. The lessons from his unconventional path, marked by hardship, determination, and ingenuity, had prepared him for this pivotal moment. His greatest contributions to Japan's future were just beginning to unfold. Defying convention, Takahashi's response to the Great Depression. Picture the world in the early 1930s. The Great Depression had its grip on global economies, and conventional wisdom dictated strict adherence to the gold standard and tight fiscal policies. But in Japan, Takahashi Korekiyo was about to turn this conventional wisdom on its head. On December 13, 1931, Takahashi abandoned the gold standard, allowing the yen to depreciate significantly against major currencies. This move set Japan on a different path from most countries that were tightening their belts and cutting government spending. Takahashi followed this up with a series of unconventional strategies. He implemented a major fiscal stimulus, where the Bank of Japan underwrote government bonds for the first time in Japanese history. While other countries were cutting back, Japan increased government spending, recording larger fiscal deficits than other nations during Takahashi's term as finance minister. But Takahashi didn't stop at fiscal policy. He also turned his attention to monetary policy, easing interest rates multiple times from March to August 1932. This move complemented his fiscal expansion, creating a powerful combination against the Depression. The effectiveness of these policies was remarkable. Between 1932 and 1936, Japan's industrial sector experienced significant growth, outpacing many other countries struggling with the Great Depression. These strategies were so effective and ahead of their time that Takahashi earned the nickname Japan's Keynes, implementing expansionary policies before Keynes published his groundbreaking economic theories. Takahashi's approach didn't go unnoticed by modern economists. Ben Bernanke, former chair of the Federal Reserve, praised Takahashi's strategy, stating that he brilliantly rescued Japan from the Great Depression through reflationary policies. On the ground, a significant part of Takahashi's fiscal stimulus went into public works. These projects provided jobs, improved infrastructure, and injected money into the economy when it was desperately needed. The combination of monetary easing, fiscal stimulus, and currency depreciation worked together to counter deflationary pressures, resulting in a recovery in personal spending and business investment. It's important to understand how radical Takahashi's approach was at the time. In a world where the prevailing wisdom was to cut spending, he advocated for active government intervention in the economy. He recognized that in times of severe economic downturn, the government needed to step in and provide the stimulus that the private sector couldn't. The results speak for themselves. Japan exited the Great Depression before any other major power, while countries like the United States and United Kingdom were still struggling with high unemployment and economic stagnation. Japan was already on the path to recovery and growth. Despite his incredible achievements, Takahashi remains a relatively unknown figure outside of Japan and economic circles. His success in combating the Great Depression provides a powerful case study in the effectiveness of expansionary fiscal and monetary policies during severe economic downturns. Let's be clear, Takahashi's policies weren't without risks. Expanding the money supply and increasing government debt always carry potential long-term consequences. But in the face of the greatest economic crisis the world had ever seen, Takahashi understood that extraordinary times called for extraordinary measures. Takahashi's response to the Great Depression wasn't just a series of economic policies, it demonstrated the power of innovative thinking and bold action in the face of crisis. While Takahashi's fiscal policies were crucial, his true economic legacy was taking shape behind the scenes in the world of banking. Takahashi was quietly orchestrating changes that would echo through generations. Let's explore how his overlooked banking reforms set the stage for Japan's post-war economic miracle. In the early 20th century, Japan's banking system was fragmented and struggling to keep pace with rapid industrialization. Numerous small banks lacked the capacity to finance large-scale projects, making the entire sector vulnerable to economic shocks. Takahashi recognized that for Japan to modernize and compete globally, it needed a robust, stable banking system capable of supporting long-term economic growth. One of Takahashi's most significant contributions was transforming the Bank of Japan into a modern central bank. He implemented policies allowing it to take a more active role in managing the economy, including the unprecedented step of having the Bank of Japan underwrite government bonds. This move provided crucial funding for fiscal stimulus during the Great Depression. Takahashi's reforms extended beyond crisis management. He implemented a series of changes aimed at strengthening and consolidating the banking sector. He encouraged bank mergers, understanding that larger, more stable banks would be better equipped to finance major industrial projects and weather economic downturns. This consolidation created a more resilient banking sector, reducing the risk of failures and increasing overall stability. Improved bank supervision and regulation were also key aspects of Takahashi's reforms. He recognized that strong oversight was necessary to prevent excessive risk-taking and ensure the soundness of financial institutions. These regulatory changes helped build trust in the banking system, encouraging more Japanese citizens and businesses to engage with banks and fueling economic growth. Takahashi emphasized supporting industrial development through the banking sector. He encouraged banks to take a more active role in financing long-term industrial projects, moving away from short-term, speculative lending. This shift aligned the banking sector more closely with Japan's broader economic goals, providing the financial backbone for the country's rapid industrialization. The impact of these reforms on Japan's economic development was profound. By creating a more stable, efficient, and growth-oriented banking system, Takahashi laid the foundation for Japan's post-war economic miracle. The banking sector he helped shape provided the massive amounts of capital needed to fuel Japan's rapid industrialization and technological advancement in the decades following World War II. Consider how Takahashi's reforms supported Japan's post-war recovery. The consolidated, well-regulated banking system channeled savings into productive investments, funding the rebuilding and expansion of Japan's industrial base. The emphasis on long-term industrial financing allowed banks to support the development of new industries and technologies, helping Japan become a leader in sectors like electronics and automobiles. The stability of the banking system Takahashi helped create provided a solid foundation for economic growth. In the volatile post-war years, when many countries struggled with financial crises, Japan's banking sector remained relatively stable, providing a reliable source of capital for businesses and supporting steady economic expansion. Takahashi's banking reforms weren't just about creating a more efficient financial system, they were part of a broader vision for Japan's economic development. He understood that a modern, industrialized economy required a sophisticated financial infrastructure to support it. By reforming the banking sector, he was creating the conditions necessary for Japan's transformation into a major economic power. The influence of Takahashi's ideas can be seen in modern economic strategies. For example, the economic policies known as Abenomics, implemented in the 2010s, emphasized the role of monetary policy in stimulating economic growth, with the Bank of Japan taking an active role in supporting the economy through measures like quantitative easing. Both Takahashi and more recent policymakers recognized the importance of coordinating monetary and fiscal policy to achieve economic goals. They understood the need for structural reforms in creating long-term economic growth, albeit focusing on different aspects of the economy. Takahashi's contributions to Japanese banking demonstrate the power of forward-thinking economic policy. By looking beyond short-term challenges and focusing on building a robust, growth-oriented financial system, he helped create the conditions for decades of economic success. His legacy serves as a reminder of the crucial role that well-designed financial institutions and policies play in supporting long-term economic development. As we look to the future, with its complex economic challenges and opportunities, the lessons of Takahashi's banking reforms remain relevant. His emphasis on financial stability, recognition of the importance of long-term industrial financing, and understanding of the role of central banks in supporting economic growth continue to influence economic thinking around the world. Takahashi's legacy in Japanese banking serves as a powerful reminder of how visionary economic policies can shape the destiny of nations, creating prosperity that endures for generations. While Takahashi's economic vision had laid the groundwork for generations of prosperity, a dark cloud was gathering on the horizon. As Japan's political landscape shifted towards militarism in the 1930s, Takahashi found himself facing a challenge that would put his policies and his life at risk. The military began to exert more influence over government policy, pushing for increased spending on arms and expansionist ventures. This growing militarism put enormous strain on the Japanese economy, which was still recovering from the Great Depression under Takahashi's guidance. Takahashi, ever the pragmatist, saw the danger in this trend. He understood that excessive military spending could undo all the progress Japan had made in its economic recovery. His response was a bold attempt to cut military spending, rooted in a deep understanding of economic principles and a genuine concern for Japan's long-term stability. Takahashi argued that excessive military spending would lead to hyperinflation and undermine Japan's financial credibility. He emphasized that the most urgent task is to maintain financial credibility, believing that a strong, stable economy was the best defense against external threats. The clash between Takahashi's economic pragmatism and military expansionism created growing tension within the Japanese government. On one side, Takahashi armed himself with economic data and a clear vision for sustainable growth. On the other, the military backed their demands with rising nationalist sentiment and dreams of imperial glory. This conflict wasn't just about numbers on a balance sheet, it represented a fundamental disagreement about Japan's future direction. Takahashi's commitment to fiscal responsibility put him in direct opposition to the prevailing political winds. While others in the government were willing to appease the military's demands, Takahashi stood firm. He maintained that excessive military expenditures would lead to inflation, increased government debt, and ultimately, economic instability. These weren't popular views in a political climate that increasingly valued military strength over economic prudence. As nationalist sentiment grew, many viewed Takahashi's economic caution as a lack of patriotism. They failed to understand that his policies were aimed at ensuring Japan's long-term strength and stability. The tension between Takahashi's economic policies and the ambitions of militarist factions came to a head in the mid-1930s. As finance minister, Takahashi continued to resist demands for increased military spending, arguing that Japan simply couldn't afford the massive military buildup without risking economic collapse. The militarists took specific actions to undermine Takahashi's influence. They launched propaganda campaigns portraying him as an obstacle to Japan's greatness and lobbied key government officials to ignore his economic advice. Some military leaders even began to bypass normal budgetary processes, seeking direct funding for their projects and effectively circumventing Takahashi's authority as finance minister. Despite the growing pressure, Takahashi didn't waver in his convictions. He continued to present economic data showing the unsustainability of increased military spending and proposed alternative budget allocations that would maintain Japan's defense capabilities without sacrificing economic stability. His courage in standing up to the militarists, even as their power grew, is a testament to his integrity and commitment to Japan's long-term welfare. The conflict between Takahashi's economic policies and Japan's militarism had profound implications for the country's future. As the military gained more influence, economic considerations took a back seat to expansionist ambitions. This shift would ultimately lead Japan down a path of unsustainable military spending and international conflict. Takahashi's approach to economic policy during this militaristic shift in Japan is often viewed as a precursor to later debates on the balance between military and economic priorities in national policy. His insistence on maintaining economic stability, even in the face of calls for increased military spending, resonates with similar debates in many countries today. As we look back on this period, it's clear that Takahashi's economic foresight was remarkably accurate. His warnings about the dangers of excessive military spending and the importance of maintaining financial credibility were prescient. Had his advice been heeded, Japan might have avoided the economic and military catastrophe that lay ahead. The tension between Takahashi's economic policies and Japan's growing militarism was building to a tragic climax. His voice of reason, which had once guided Japan through economic crisis, was about to be silenced. The consequences of this silencing would reshape not just Japan's economy, but its entire future as a nation. The conflict between economic pragmatism and military expansionism was about to reach its devastating conclusion, with consequences that would echo through Japanese history for decades to come. As dawn broke on February 26, 1936, Japan was about to experience a violent turn of events that would alter its economic trajectory. The February 26th incident, a failed coup d'etat by young military officers, would have far-reaching consequences for the nation's future. The political climate in Japan had become increasingly tense. The military, emboldened by growing nationalist sentiment, was pushing for ever-increasing budgets to fund their expansionist ambitions. Takahashi Korekiyo's efforts to curb military spending had made him a target. His economic policies were now seen as an obstacle to Japan's imperial aspirations. On that February morning, the coup plotters moved swiftly and brutally. They stormed Takahashi's residence, catching the 81-year-old finance minister completely off guard. In a matter of moments, Takahashi was gone, assassinated by those who claimed to be acting in Japan's best interests. The immediate aftermath of the February 26th incident was chaotic. Although the coup attempt ultimately failed, the assassination of such a prominent figure sent shockwaves through the Japanese government and society. Those who had supported Takahashi's economic policies were left reeling, while the militarists saw an opportunity to push their agenda forward. The consequences of Takahashi's death extended beyond military policy. His assassination also had profound effects on Japan's economic trajectory. The fiscal discipline that had been a hallmark of his policies was replaced by reckless spending on military projects. This shift put enormous strain on Japan's economy, leading to inflation and financial instability. One of the lesser-known impacts of Takahashi's assassination was its effect on Japan's international relationships. His death removed a key figure who had been working to maintain positive economic ties with the West, particularly the United States. Without his moderating influence, Japan's foreign policy became increasingly confrontational, contributing to the deterioration of international relations in the lead-up to World War II. The February 26th incident also had significant implications for Japan's domestic politics. It exposed deep divisions within the military and highlighted the growing influence of extremist factions. The government's response to the incident, which included purges of some military leaders, further complicated the political landscape and contributed to the instability that would characterize the next few years. In the economic sphere, Takahashi's death led to a shift in monetary policy that would have long-lasting effects. His successor abandoned the managed currency system that Takahashi had implemented, leading to a period of rapid inflation. This change not only impacted domestic economic stability, but also affected Japan's trade relationships and its position in the global economy. The assassination also had unexpected consequences for Japan's industrial policy. Takahashi had been a proponent of balanced industrial development, supporting both heavy industry and consumer goods production. In the wake of his death, economic policy shifted heavily towards military-related industries, leading to distortions in the economy that would persist for years. One often overlooked aspect of the February 26th incident is its impact on Japan's financial institutions. Takahashi had been working on reforms to strengthen the banking sector and improve financial regulation. His death interrupted these efforts, leaving Japan's financial system vulnerable to the strains it would face in the coming years of military expansion and war. The incident also marked a turning point in the relationship between Japan's civilian government and the military. The failure to prevent the assassination of such a high-ranking official exposed the weakness of civilian control over the armed forces. This shift in power dynamics would have significant implications for Japan's governance in the years leading up to World War II. In the realm of economic thought, Takahashi's assassination led to a suppression of dissenting views on fiscal and monetary policy. Economists who shared Takahashi's perspective perspectives on the dangers of excessive military spending found themselves marginalized or silenced. This narrowing of economic discourse would limit Japan's policy options in the face of growing challenges. The February 26th incident also had ripple effects on Japan's education system. In the aftermath of the assassination, there was a push to promote more nationalistic curricula in schools, emphasizing military virtues over economic and civic education. This shift would shape the worldview of a generation of Japanese youth. The loss of Takahashi Korekiyo removed a crucial voice of moderation at a critical juncture in Japanese history, altering the nation's course in ways that would be felt for decades to come. His ideas would prove to be remarkably resilient, shaping economic thought for generations to come. Let's explore how Takahashi Korekiyo's economic strategies continue to shape modern financial policies, even if his name isn't widely recognized outside Japan. While we've discussed his innovative approach to fiscal stimulus and monetary policy, the real question is, how do these ideas play out in today's complex economic landscape? Consider the response to the 2008 global financial crisis. Central banks worldwide, including the Federal Reserve, implemented policies that echoed Takahashi's approach from the 1930s. They aggressively eased monetary policy, slashed interest rates, and governments rolled out massive fiscal stimulus packages. These actions, while not without controversy, helped prevent a complete economic meltdown and laid the groundwork for recovery. But Takahashi's influence extends beyond crisis management. His emphasis on coordinated fiscal and monetary policy has become a cornerstone of modern macroeconomic management. Today's policymakers understand that neither fiscal stimulus nor monetary easing alone is sufficient to combat severe economic downturns. Instead, they advocate for a comprehensive approach that utilizes both tools in concert, just as Takahashi did nearly a century ago. The concept of reflation, deliberately inducing inflation to stimulate economic growth, has gained traction in recent years as many developed economies struggle with persistent low inflation or deflation. The Bank of Japan's attempts to combat deflation in the 2010s can be seen as a modern application of Takahashi's reflationary policies. It's a striking example of how his ideas continue to influence economic thought even as new challenges arise. You might wonder why Takahashi remains a lesser-known figure outside Japan, despite his significant contributions. Several factors contribute to this, including language barriers and historical focus. Much of the primary source material about Takahashi is in Japanese, making it less accessible to Western economists and historians. Additionally, the narrative of the Great Depression has traditionally centered on the experiences of the United States and Europe, overshadowing Japan's unique response to the crisis. However, Takahashi's legacy is gaining more recognition in recent years. Economists studying the Great Depression and the history of economic thought are increasingly acknowledging his pioneering role in implementing what we now recognize as Keynesian policies. His life story, from humble beginnings to economic mastermind, serves as a powerful reminder of the potential impact of unconventional thinking in economics. As we face new economic challenges in the 21st century, from climate change to technological disruption, the lessons from Takahashi's work remain relevant. His willingness to challenge orthodoxy and adapt to changing circumstances offers valuable insights for today's policymakers and economists. In an era of global economic uncertainty, Takahashi's pragmatic and innovative approach to economic management may be more crucial than ever. Takahashi's anti-colonial beliefs, had they prevailed, might have significantly altered the course of world history. His emphasis on economic strength over military might offered an alternative path for Japan's development. If his voice hadn't been silenced, could Japan have avoided its disastrous entry into World War II? It's a tantalizing what-if that highlights the potential impact of standing firm in one's convictions. You might be surprised by how relevant Takahashi's ideas remain in today's global economy. His pragmatic approach to policymaking, willingness to challenge orthodoxy, and emphasis on long-term stability over short-term gains offer valuable insights for modern economic challenges. Thank you for joining us on Echoes, Events That Shaped Japan. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden stories of Japanese history, there's much more to discover. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts or watch the enhanced visual episodes on our YouTube channel. Journey through the pivotal moments of Japanese history that Western textbooks overlooked. Each episode unravels the complex threads of Japan's past, revealing how events from the past 150 years continue to influence modern Japanese society, culture, and identity. Remember to subscribe, share with friends who love Japanese history and culture, and join us next time as we continue to explore the echoes that shaped modern Japan.